The regiment nobody ordered. The spires of Ashenvale were dying. Not falling, not yet, but dying, the way a living thing dies when its light starts to flicker before the dark finally takes it. The bioluminescent towers of the Solari capital had glowed gold and violet for 3,000 years, pulsing gently with the rhythm of the city's own bloodstream. Tonight, they flickered like a candle in a hurricane. Draith siege lances had found the outer ring 2 days ago. The inner ring would fall within the week. Everyone in the city knew it, even the ones who refused to say it aloud. Inside the ruling chorus chamber, saying it aloud was exactly the problem. The chorus governed by unanimous harmony, no law passed, no order given, until every voice agreed. It was a system built for a peaceful species, refined over centuries of trade disputes and border negotiations. It had never been built for a war where the enemy grew stronger every time you lost a soldier. High Speaker Merit Alvas stood at the edge of the circular chamber, arms folded into her long ceremonial sleeves, listening to the same argument spin for the 40th time. Elder Thessaly wanted to sue for terms. Elder Voron wanted to evacuate the non-combatants first. Nobody wanted to be the one who broke harmony to say we need to fight, now, or none of this will matter. They are still debating, she murmured to her aide, while the third ring's shield generators are already failing. The humans, Speaker, the aide said quietly. Their ship has entered orbit. Merit felt something loosen in her chest, relief, maybe, or just exhaustion. She had spent 11 months petitioning a species she'd never met, invoking a treaty so old most of the chorus had forgotten it existed. Earth. A name that meant nothing to most Solari except a rumor, a species that fought wars among themselves for thousands of years before they'd even left their own atmosphere. She had asked for generals. She had asked for the architects of humanity's greatest victories. She had asked, specifically, for honor. What descended through Ashenvale's smoke-choked sky was a single dropship, gray and unmarked, scarred with the kind of wear that came from use, not decoration. It landed hard on the eastern platform, kicked up ash in a violent gust, and sat there, engines ticking, like it had somewhere else to be. Merit walked out to meet it with 4 members of her honor guard, expecting apology, expecting explanation. Neither came. The ramp lowered. 40 humans walked down it in loose formation, wearing matte combat gear the color of wet stone, stripped of any insignia except small unit patches that meant nothing to her. No parade dress. No polished boots. Half of them were already scanning the skyline instead of looking at her. A woman stepped to the front. Mid-40s, dark hair pulled back tight, a face that gave away nothing at all. She didn't offer a hand or a bow. Speaker Alvas. Colonel Renata Kess, 3rd Expeditionary Regiment. I requested Earth's finest military minds, Merit said, unable to keep the edge from her voice. Your generals. You got them. Kessa's eyes moved past her, cataloging the platform, the causeway beyond it, the flickering spires. 40 operators, full logistics and intel support in orbit. That's what your treaty gets you, Speaker. That's what you're going to need. Behind Kess, a broad-shouldered man with a shaved head and a rifle slung low across his chest was already unfolding a portable terrain display, murmuring coordinates without waiting for permission. Master Sergeant Idris Okafor, she would later learn his name was, though in that moment he was simply the second human who hadn't looked at her once. You haven't even greeted the chorus, Merit said. There are protocols. Ma'am, respectfully, Kess said, your protocols are why the third ring is going to fall by Thursday. Your defensive doctrine assumes the enemy plays fair. They don't. Before we shake hands, I need to see the causeway. The Sunspire Causeway was the last defensible line between the Draith Advance and the inner rings of Ashenvale, a raised crystal bridge spanning a mile-wide gorge, ringed by ceremonial statues of the Concord's founding speakers. Kess walked the length of it in silence, Okafor a step behind her, ignoring the nervous Solari captain trying to explain the formation's history. This is where you're planning to make your stand, Kess said finally. It wasn't a question. It has held for generations against lesser threats, the captain said. The Draith will see our resolve and they'll see 40,000 easy kills lined up in the open, Okafor said, not unkindly, just flatly. Ma'am, do you know how the Draith fight? Not tactically. Biologically. Merritt answered before the captain could. They call it resonance. Every warrior lost in battle is witnessed by the collective. The grief, the fury, it feeds the survivors. It is why our attrition tactics have failed. Every soldier we kill costs us 2 more. Kess went very still. You're telling me this species gets a battlefield buff every time you kill one of them? That is a crude way of phrasing centuries of Draith spiritual philosophy, Merritt said. But yes. Kess exchanged a look with Okafor. Something passed between them, recognition, not surprise. That changes everything. She turned to the captain. Pull your soldiers off the causeway. Colonel, this line is sacred ground. It's a kill box with your name written on it, Kess said. We're not holding this position. We're going to let them think it's undefended. You intend to abandon the causeway. I intend to bury it, Kess said, and walked on without waiting for a response. 2 days later, the first Draith scout wave crossed the gorge. They came cautiously at first, 6 armored outriders, testing the silence of the causeway, expecting resistance and finding none. Human operators lay motionless in blinds dug into the crystal stone, tagging each outrider with passive sensors as they passed, letting them walk the entire length of the bridge unmolested. We're just going to let them through? Merritt demanded over comms, watching from the command tent with growing horror. They'll report our positions. They'll bring the full force down on us. That's the idea, Kess said, eyes fixed on the tactical display filling with data. Every second they walk that bridge thinking it's clear, we learn more about how they move as a collective. You would let an enemy force walk freely into striking range of our capital just to gather intelligence? Kess didn't blink. Speaker, mercy is a gift you give after you've won. It's not a strategy you use to survive. She turned back to the display before Merritt could answer. You want to save your city? You're going to have to trust me to do things you're not going to like. The display lit up, not with 6 outriders anymore, but hundreds, then thousands, pouring out of the ash-choked hills in a single converging wave, the ground shuddering under the weight of them. Warlord Isix had seen the empty causeway and mistaken silence for surrender. Colonel, Okafor's voice crackled in, tense. That's the full assault. That's everything they've got. A long pause. Then Kess keyed her mic, voice dropping to something almost gentle, almost sad. Let them come, she said. This is exactly what we needed to see. The resonance breaks. The Draith wave hit the causeway like a tide breaking against a shore that wasn't there. Thousands of warriors surged across the crystal bridge in perfect, terrible unison, voices rising in a chant that vibrated through the stone itself. To the Solari watching from the inner ring, it looked like the end of everything. That was exactly what Kess wanted them to think. Now, she said quietly into her comm. Charges buried beneath the causeway's ceremonial statues detonated in a precise, rolling sequence, not to destroy the bridge outright, but to collapse it in sections, funneling the Draith into narrow choke points between crumbling crystal and open air. Warriors at the front tried to stop, warriors behind them couldn't. The chant broke into screams. From concealed positions in the gorge walls, human fire teams opened up in disciplined, overlapping lanes that turned the collapsing causeway into a killing field with no possible retreat. Merritt watched from the command tent, hand pressed to her mouth, unable to look away. It was carnage. By every value her culture held sacred, it was a war crime. And it was working. Their formations fracturing, Okafor reported, moving his team along the gorge ridge. They're not adapting. They're just dying in place. Because losing isn't supposed to happen like this, Kess said, watching a secondary display where Solari sensor drones tracked a spike of energy pulsing deep within the Draith ranks, a rhythm that rose every time a warrior fell. There it is. Confirmed resonance signature. Every death out there is being broadcast to the whole collective in real time. So we jam it. We can't jam what we can't find the source of, Kess said. But now we know it's a relay network, not mysticism. Relay networks can be found. And broken. She turned to Merritt. Speaker. I need everything your intelligence division has on Draith communication technology. Prisoner interrogations. Anything. Merritt's throat was dry. We do not interrogate prisoners. We have never taken any. It was considered dishonorable, Kess finished, not unkindly. I know. Right now, on that causeway, there are wounded Draith who didn't die in the collapse. Every one of them is intelligence that could save the rest of your species. Merritt closed her eyes. 3,000 years of Solari philosophy screamed against it. Do it, she said. Idris Okafor found the wounded relay carrier half buried in rubble at the edge of the shattered causeway, an armored Draith warrior whose crest markings pulsed faintly in time with the resonance signal Kess's team had detected. He should have finished it and moved on. But he heard something else beneath the rubble, a smaller, higher voice, panicked. A Solari cadet, pinned under a collapsed support strut. Okafor made the call in half a second. He shouldered his rifle and started digging. The strut shifted, came down hard across his shoulder and ribs. He didn't stop moving. He dragged the cadet clear behind a fallen statue as Draith fire raked the space they'd just occupied, and only then keyed his calm, voice tight. Colonel, soldier down, my fault. I'm mobile. Relay carriers alive, 40 meters east, tagged for retrieval. Later, a young Solari medic, stitching his ribs, asked quietly, why risk yourself for a soldier you don't even know? Okafor didn't look up from checking his rifle. Didn't do it for her. Did it so the next person who needs pulling out of the rubble doesn't have to wonder if anyone's coming. From the command tent, Merritt had watched the whole thing on a drone feed, watched a human she'd judged as something closer to a weapon than a person bleed through his own armor for a stranger. She said nothing. But something in her calculations shifted, quietly and permanently. The relay carrier gave them what they needed within the hour, not through torture, which Kess flatly refused to authorize, but through a translation matrix and the simple logic of a soldier who understood his collective had already left him for dead. The resonance network's core wasn't scattered across the battlefield. It was centralized, a single mobile spire, 6 kilometers behind the main Draith line. Destroy it, and the entire collective lost its amplification. Every death would become, once again, simply a death. Warlord Isix reached the same conclusion at nearly the same moment. His elite guard peeled away from the main assault, converging on the spire's position, not to retreat, but to protect it personally. He knows, Kess said. He's going to protect the spire himself. Then we get there first, Okafor said, wincing. Kess looked at him, then nodded. Small team. Fast in, fast out. Merritt, for the first time since she'd landed, there was something like a request in her voice. I need your forces to hold the perimeter. Not to fight my way. Your way. Give the Draith something else to focus on. Merritt, who had spent 11 months waiting for permission that would never come from a paralyzed chorus, made the decision alone, for the first time in her life. It will be done, she said. The resonant spire rose out of the ash-scarred hills like a black thorn, thrumming with the grief and fury of 10,000 warriors. Kess led 6 operators through its outer defenses in near silence, until only she and Isix remained standing in the inner chamber, the resonance core pulsing between them like a wounded heart. Isix was enormous, a warlord who had never known defeat in 300 engagements. He looked at Kess, small, unarmored beyond her worn combat vest, with something like genuine confusion. You fight without belief, he said, his translated voice a low grinding rasp. Without the resonance. Without righteousness. What sustains you, small creature, when you're dead? Simply, die. Kes didn't answer with words. She closed the distance, and the fight that followed was short, vicious, and utterly without ceremony. Only after it was over, standing over him, did she finally speak. You need a chorus of the dead behind you to feel strong, Isix. We just remember them. Turns out that's enough. She drove her blade into the resonance core. It went dark. Across 6 kilometers of shattered causeway and burning field, the Draith assault simply stopped. Warriors who had fought like a single furious organism moments before faltered, faces slack with a confusion that looked almost like waking from a dream. Before her team pulled out, Adler, the regiment's signal specialist, patched a live feed through the dying Spire's own network, broadcasting one final transmission to every Draith unit still standing on Ashenvale soil. Not a threat. Not a demand. Just a single line, translated into their own battle cant, sent in Kessa's flat, unhurried voice. Your gods are silent now. Go home while you still remember why. For the first time in the war, the ascendancy broke and ran. 3 days later, Ashenvale's spires burned bright again, gold and violet against a sky finally clear of smoke. The ruling chorus had already begun drafting ceremonies, monuments, speeches of gratitude. Kes wasn't there to hear any of it. Merritt found her on the eastern platform, alone, watching her regiment quietly load equipment back onto the cold harbor, already forgotten by the parade being planned 3 kilometers away. You could stay, Merritt said. Be honored. Be thanked. We're not here to be thanked, Speaker. Kes shouldered her pack. Earth didn't send us to be admired. We're here to buy you time to figure out how to survive on your own terms, without needing us next time. She paused at the ramp. You made a hard call out there. Held the line your way, not mine. That's the part that actually matters. And if the Draith return? Or something worse finds us first? Kes looked back at her, and for just a moment, the flat calm cracked into something almost like a smile. Then you call us. And we'll remind whoever it is why the rest of the galaxy tells stories about Earth in the dark. Merritt watched the cold harbor lift off into the clearing sky, already gone before the first monument had even broken ground, and understood, finally, that the peace she'd spent her life protecting had never been something a single species could hold alone.